Hello again, everybody. Jeremy Plonk with Express Bet and First Bet, joined by Jeff Siegel. Jeff, we're here for It's in Horse Racing, and with the Whitney Stakes in the rearview mirror, it was soggy at Saratoga, but we saw some great racing. Nothing on the turf, of course, on Saturday. We'll talk about that a little bit later on, but maybe we have a new horse in the Classic division to talk about after last week as well. We'll hit that and more.
Yeah, I hope so, but I doubt it. We're talking about next, and we'll look at him. But Arthur's rule was right, I should say, was very, very well. He ruled the roost for sure,
Yeah.
and it looks to me like he's a colt that has an enormous amount of talent. But as we've seen over several months this year, loose on the lead and preferably on a wet track is a recipe for success.
Yeah.
It doesn't always work out in the long run, but we've seen this happen now where a lot of horses look really good given pristine trips such as that. And then all of a sudden, next time when they don't get their conditions, they don't look all that great. So you got to live with that and try to evaluate these horses. But next, I don't think it would matter with him. I think he can run on anything, anywhere, anytime, any surface. All he needs is a chance, and it doesn't look like he's going to get that, which is kind of disappointing. We'll talk about that in a bit as well. But overall, good racing last week. Hopefully the rain will stay away, but I don't think that's going to happen. Our turf racing might be impacted once again this week, and that's disappointing, but it's just the way it is.
Right. And then some news last week off the track. Mindframe, runner-up in the Belmont Stakes, runner-up in the Haskell, and aiming towards the Travers Stakes. It's going to be sidelined for a couple months, so with bone bruising reportedly. So he is out of the Travers discussion, which means Team Mike Rapoli and Todd Pletcher are back in with fierceness now to run in the Travers Stakes. There was some talk after the Jim Dandy that they wouldn't wheel back quickly in the Travers, but as you and I have mentioned many times, how horses get placed in this game often aren't because of what they're doing, but because what stablemates in their barn aren't doing. And so, therefore, the absence of Mindframe will put fierceness back into the mix for the Travers Stakes coming up later this month in August. Let's get to our first of 5 topics on this week, and we hinted to a few of these already, but one horse who is not targeting the Breeders' Cup, maybe the Greenwood Cup, his name is Next. And in the Birdstone Stakes, he was leading the procession around the track. He's the top marathon horse in the country. And at Saratoga, few took him on, and nobody took it seriously.
For home with a 3-length lead over Mask Parade. They're at the top of the stretch. And this is Next World. He is all alone, just strolling through. Let him hear it from the crowd, ladies and gentlemen. Next, winning the Birdstone. Once again, he will win by more than the 12 he's accustomed to. Next gallops. Mask Parade checked in second.
You know it's a no contest when the track announcer's got to think of something to say in the stretch, so he just whooped up the crowd a little bit to salute that procession home. They've got the carousel in downtown Saratoga Springs in Congress Park. That was probably a tougher ride on the carousel than it was on Next in this race. There was just no competition. Field of 4, a horse pulled up right out of the starting gate. The pacemaker basically pulled up out of the race. There were 2 of them coming to the wire. Third place horse got beat 98 lengths, something like that. This was just an exhibition. It wasn't really competition, but I don't know if he's going to find any competition going long, Jeff, in these marathon races.
Funny thing is, it'd be funny if he were to enter in one of these marathons and nobody showed up to run against him. He'd be spectacular bid looking for a walkover, right?
Right.
But here's the thing about Next. I mean, I watched that race. It was the one race I was certainly going to watch over the weekend. And after the race was over, I was really let down. Not because he didn't win by 100 lengths, because he could have. But I realized that this is no longer any kind of great accomplishment anymore for him. He really deserves, and I think the racing fans deserve, to see him run against tougher competition. As you show this chart, it's like, I think I've seen this before, and guess what? We have. And at this stage of the game, don't we want more? I do.
Yeah, and you look, the winning margins of those races, the Brooklyn by 2.25 last year, then the Birdstone this race by 11 3/4. He won the Greenwood Cup at Parks in September last year by 25 and then was put away. His 3 wins this year by 11 1/4, 9 1/4, and then 22 1/4 over the weekend. I think we do want to see more, but it seems like with the connections here, trainer Doug Callens, owner Michael Foster of Ohio, they are looking to keep this horse long, Jeff. They are not going to cut back to 1.25 miles. So if they don't cut back to 1.25 miles, that means no Jockey Club Gold Cup, no Pacific Classic, no Breeders' Cup Classic. The dirt marathons left on the schedule this year, the Greenwood Cup, they could go back to Park September 21st and defend their title in that race where they'll be 1-9 and 20 lengths the best again. They could go to Santa Anita for the Tokyo City Cup for 100,000. That makes no sense to do that. And then there's the Thoroughbred Aftercare Alliance that they run on Breeders' Cup weekend, either Friday or Saturday as part of the undercard for Breeders' Cup. That's only 250,000. So you look at a winner's share there of about 150 grand. I mean, that's barely running third in a race like the Jockey Club Gold Cup or the Pacific Classic. So from a financial standpoint, I don't know. I think they probably run back in the Greenwood Cup if that's what they're talking about, and then put him away again for a season next year.
Well, he's really better than that. We all know that.
Right.
4-race campaign for a year will keep him going for a long time, which is great.
Right.
But here's the thing that struck me after that race also. Because I've seen this happen, there is no threat of losing at all against anybody that would run in the marathon like that. Suddenly the accomplishment kind of falls flat to me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, yeah, we know you can do that. It'd be like Shohei Ohtani deciding to stay in Class D baseball, you know? I mean, I think, yeah, we've seen him hit him 1 million home runs, but let's do it against the best. And isn't that what this sport is all about? It's not about money, or at least it shouldn't be, because you shouldn't be in this sport if you're about money. Because, you know, and if you are about money, then you're not maximizing his revenue ability anyway. I mean, he's certainly better than that. I mean, we saw what Krupe did in the Whitney, and he destroyed Krupe. So it's not like he has to go out and prove that he couldn't run against these horses. Of course he could. As for shortening up from 1 3/8, which he ran last time, to 1.25 miles, that's no issue. We know he likes the dirt. I mean, what's there left to prove? I mean, I would be, if I were the owner of this horse and it was about money, I would probably keep doing this. But on the other hand, because it's like printing money, but on the other hand, from a financial standpoint, you can make more money in one race than you can in the next 3 years if they let him step out of his division and beat horses that we know he can beat. So I don't know. I'm a little bit, I don't know, flat now about a horse that was and maybe still is my favorite horse. But I want him to be able to show how great he is, because this is a sport as it is a business. And if you're not willing to tackle the best, then it becomes less of a sport than it should be.
It kind of reminds you a little bit of Pepper's Pride in New Mexico when she was running off that big win streak, and everybody's like, yeah, but it's New Mexico. It's kind of like that. I know this horse is doing it at Churchill Downs, at Belmont, at Aqueduct, at Saratoga, but they're marathons, and it's not the division where, you know, the elite horses are. So I can see how the public will switch a bit and start to feel that way, because it's time to step out and do something a little bit different with this horse. I read a very good feature about the owner, Michael Foster, that's published at bloodhorse.com. And I think after reading that, I get it a little bit more. He had a quote in there that's unlike a quote that I've seen from any other owner, really. He said, when I own a horse, I own that horse until I die or the horse dies. He is not one who's in it for the money. He retires his horses to his own farm that he bought in Ohio. He's going to keep this horse running as long as he can to have fun and go out and celebrate and go to the races a couple times a year, every quarter, whatever you want to look at, running 4 times a year, how they're spread out. It just feels a little bit different, right? And the way he's being campaigned is a little bit different. He's not in it for the money because, like you said, he's running in these, $150,000, $200,000 races. If they were going for the money, they would go for the money. So they're not doing that. They're not going for the prestige necessarily. They're running at prestigious racetracks. And, of course, to win a big race at Saratoga or to win at Churchill Downs and the Isaac Murphy, those are big deals for a guy whose best horse ever before this, Michael Foster, who retired at age 56 from Wall Street, according to that article. He's got money. He's not super old, so it's not like one of these guys who has to do something before he passes away, It's not a last gasp effort for him. He's enjoying the ride. The best horse he ever had was a $200,000 earner who was an Ohio bred stakes winner before this. So he's just in a different, I don't know. He's in a different place because a lot of big owners in this game, when they get into the game, they jump in with one of these big syndicates, and right away their horses are with Chad Brown. They come right from Wall Street to Chad Brown, and they're running at these big places, right? They almost get spoiled. Like nobody worked their way up through the ranks. This is a guy who actually worked his way up through Ohio's ranks with the horses in Ohio. Now he's got one that can compete in Kentucky, and go from Ohio to Kentucky is a big deal, regionally like that. I don't know. He just feels like he's different than other owners. I don't know the man personally at all. And I had the same opinion looking at the racing form and watching the replays of this horse that, my God, you got to do something different with this horse right now. But after reading that piece about him, I have a little bit different feel that like he's marching to a different beat than us guys who are just looking at the paper and maybe a lot of fans out there. So if it's crossed to what the fans want, I can understand how fans could become frustrated with that. But I kind of think he's coming at it from a pretty good spot.
Well, he's coming at it from what he wants. It doesn't matter what anybody else wants. I'm just disappointed that he's not, that he looks at this way. I mean, he's unique for sure. And if he wants to keep beating on the bum of the month club horses like Joe Louis did back in the 30s, then fine, go ahead and do it. But at this stage of the game, I'm no longer going to be impressed because his horse is doing something he's already done half a dozen times. Yeah. And if he's not and if he doesn't think he's good enough or doesn't want to allow the horse to be this good enough, then I'm moving on. And not that he cares what I think, but I think it's disappointing because there's still a plenty of sport in this game in my blood, as opposed to the gambling or whatever else there is. I enjoy this game as much as a sport as I do for the gambling aspect, and I want to see the best meet the best. And if it doesn't happen, then I'm disappointed as a fan, but I'm going to have to live with it because I don't make those decisions.
Right. $62,500 claim. Started his career with Wesley Ward. Next was 3 for 11 for Ward. Since coming to Doug Cowan's barn, 9 for 11, and he just keeps running it up now. We'll see what they do next with him. It's a Greenwood Cup and then put him away for the year. Maybe we see him out at the Breeders' Cup in the Thoroughbred after Carolines. Maybe we see him in one of the big races. Maybe something will change. I mean, this guy seems to be managing from the heart as an owner, and maybe his heart will change, right? Maybe you get closer to an event and you say, you know what? This is what we need to do. He's doing so well. Maybe the horse will tell you, as they often say, right? Maybe the horse will do so good in the mornings that they'll decide, let's go ahead and take a big bite of the apple and see what we can do. You and I are both in agreement on this. If this horse were to turn back to a mile and a quarter, Pacific Classic, Jockey Club Gold Cup, he would absolutely be the horse to beat, and we both think he would win those kind of races, correct?
I don't even think it'd be close. By the way, in watching him run, and I think one of the great reasons why he is so good is he's as good a mover, an athlete, as I think I've seen this year or any year. He floats over the ground. It's so effortlessly. He spends absolutely no energy whatsoever, which is one of the reasons why he can run a mile and a half without taking a deep breath and come home with final quarter faster than most horses can do if they're running a mile. So not only does he have that tactical speed, and again, he goes so slow the first part of those races, but that's actually a plus because he is so he accepts his role. He knows exactly what he needs to do. He doesn't pull. He never gets rank. He just knows what he's going to do, and he only has to run a quarter of a mile. So he's never put into any stress at all. And I don't think shortening up to a mile and a quarter when they might go couple of seconds faster during the early stages of the race, I don't think he'd care that. He could care less about that. One of these days, maybe we'll have that opportunity to watch him get tested in a sport which, we want to see the best run against the best. As of right now, though, winning the Greenwood Cup again, that's not going to do a whole lot for the fans of the sport.
We didn't get the answer we were looking for as to what's next in our first question. So let's go to another question. What do we make of a horse who's loose on the lead in the mud? These are run up the score kind of scenarios, right? An easy lead uncontested is the easiest way to win a race in horse racing. And in the mud, you're more than likely to run up margins as some horses handle it and others don't. So after what was a star-studded edition of the Whitney on paper, we might know less about Arthur's Ride than we did going into it, even though he got his first career stakes win.
National Treasure still biding his time, 3.5 off the pace in third. Then First Mission, followed by Post Time. Warrior Johnny 8 lengths off the pace. It's another 5 lengths to Disarm, who is racing about 1.5 lengths in front of Croupy, starting to launch his bid. Bright Future far back, 1:10-1 for 6 furlongs. Top of the stretch for Arthur's Ride, chased intently by Skippy Longstocking, and National Treasure still with plenty of work to do. Post Time is next, and Croupy coming fast in the center of the racetrack. A 16th to go, and Arthur's Ride still has a commanding lead. What a tremendous debut in stakes competition. The Grade 1 Whitney to Arthur's Ride. Croupy was second. Post Time finished third, and Disarm was fourth.
We talked about this race in our handicapping podcast on Friday's First Call. We talked about this race being a stallion maker, right? Horses who have won the Whitney in the past, have gone on to become great stallions. The Gun Runners, horses like Quality Road, who came up just short in this race. Arthur's Ride may have a big stud career ahead of him. This is a horse with a lot of talent, and a win like this and back-to-back wins by big margins are going to get the attention of the speed figure makers. He had a 1:11 last time, Jeff. I don't know if you know what he got in this race, but he ran another fast one, obviously. He has made his stallion career. Now we're going to find out what he can do in the Classic division, maybe on a fast track. I mean, Del Mar, it's not going to rain come November, you wouldn't think.
No, I think he got a 110, which is 1 point less than that. But again, he's won his races on the lead. And if he can't make the lead, then we'd really find out how good he was or is. One thing about Flightline, he would make the lead, but he looked like a horse that would settle behind horses if he had to. And because he was such a terrific horse, both being by habit. So Arthur's Ride can ride on Flightline's coattails going to stud if Flightline is as good a stallion as we think he's going to be. And of course, Tappett's had other top stallions as well. But Arthur's Ride is a quick horse, and he's the kind of horse that can go and get the lead if he wants it bad enough. And they're not going to be rating him or taking him back or saying, well, we could sit second if we of course he could sit second. Well, why would you want to?
Right.
He's one of these horses that once he gets in the rhythm, he keeps rolling along. But I knew he was in good shape down the backstretch because National Treasure, who has never really run that great without being on or right on the lead or near it, and he's never run good on an off track. I figured he might be really ready to go backwards, and he did. I think there's enough of an excuse there. But he's another horse. You put him in a race where he has to challenge early on, and sometimes he could be vulnerable. Maybe not at a mile, because we saw how well he ran in the Breeders' Cup Mile last year. But at 1.25 miles, he's suspect even given the best of trips. So I don't know what Bob's going to do with him. But Arthur's Ride, now we know he can handle it off track, which he didn't do 2 races back when he ran poorly. He's right there for maybe a championship run in the older division, and that would make him worth very, very much a lot of money as a stallion if he could do that.
The more and more we get down this road of the Classic division, the more Forever Young looks good coming back from Japan when it comes to 1.25 miles in the Classic. I know Arthur's Ride did win 1.25 miles already at Saratoga. He won during the Belmont Stakes Festival at a Lowndes Company, but it'll be a different ball game come Breeders' Cup Classic. I would have to think when you look at the result of that race and what happened last year, I know he won the Preakness Stakes, but I just don't see National Treasure as 1.25 mile horse under pressure. I would think they would go back and try to get that win in the Breeders' Cup Dirt Mile, the one that they just missed by a nose to the great Cody's Wish last year. You would think coming out of this race, Arthur's Ride goes towards the Classic, National Treasure cuts back. What about Croupy in here? I thought he ran a pretty good race, and he looks like a Classic kind of horse who's coming to hand.
He's a nice horse. I mean, he really is. And getting back to National Treasure, it would be different if he had won the Breeders' Cup Mile last year. Been there, done that type of thing. He didn't win it, so he still has that as a goal. So I think they'll back him up. As for Croupy, I mean, we saw him run against Next last time out, and Next beat him from here to there. And then he comes back and runs well. And don't forget, he'd won the Suburban before that. So it wasn't like he just popped up and ran a good race. I mean, 2 of his last 3 races were fantastic. And the one that wasn't, well, you saw who he ran against. Don't we
Yeah.
give him a pass on that? Could Droopy be a dangerous horse on Breeders' Cup a day, going a mile and a quarter? Absolutely. Nice horse. Never a very nice horse. It's like horses that were trying to beat Flightline during Flightline's reign. Okay, you get to beat a mile, but everybody gets beat a mile. Don't hold that against them. So, yeah, absolutely. The rest of these horses, the Skippy Longstockings of the world, Post Time, I mean, nice horses. First Mission, I thought Bright Future would run well. Maybe it was the off track that turned him in. These are all really nice horses, but nobody should be afraid of any of these. Yeah. And that includes Arthur's Ride, because, all you need is one speed horse to go with them to really test him. And we don't know if he'll get that until Breeders' Cup Day.
Yeah, and I think you're talking Dirt Mile for those other horses. Skippy Longstocking, who's run in the Dirt Mile in the past. And if Post Time were to go under the Breeders' Cup, he's certainly not going to go any farther. But he's turned out to be a really nice story out of Maryland. And for Brittany Russell, certainly a horse who has escaped his region and done well on the road this year. Post Time has had some really nice efforts hitting the board in that mile, and now in the Whitney out of that base at Laurel Park. Let's go to our third topic this week on It's Official as we move away from the Classic division. Our Breeders' Cup tracker takes a look at a big race in the distaff division and one in the filly and mare sprint. We thought it was going to be a real intersectional rivalry. We had Pretty Mischievous, last year's Kentucky Oaks winner, going west to Del Mar last week. She also had Scylla from Kentucky for Bill Mott. But they had to take on Adair Manor over her own track. And while Scylla looked like she was gone at the head of the stretch, Adair Manor got the last laugh over that track at Del Mar that she likes so much.
Down at the rail is Olivia Twist. Pretty Mischievous on the far side. Here's Adair Manor back in fourth, being ridden along. Adair Manor still has 6 to make up, and then Flying Connection. They turn for home, and Salah now still keeping on going. Salah by 3. Adair Manor now coming fast on the outside. Adair Manor's gaining ground with every stride. Adair Manor, Salah. Adair Manor has got her. And Adair Manor and Juan Hernandez will take the Clementel Hirsch. Second place went to Salah. It gets pretty close here for third. It'll be either Flying Connection or Desert Dawn.
Clement Hirsch goes for the second year in a row to Adair Manor at just a mile and a 16th there. I mean, if Scylla wasn't able to put her away with that kind of comfortable space from the head of the stretch home at a mile and an eighth for the Breeders' Cup distaff, it looks even better for Adair Manor, Jeff. And her ability to shut off and finish versus just going to the front and dominating is another feather in her cap. She is looking really, really strong in the distaff division now.
She had never lost a race in which she had made the lead. So this was a different dimension for her, which is good to know, because now you can kind of take hold and settle and make a run if you want to. You don't have to be in front. But she is extraordinary. And I think right now you can say she's head and shoulders above the older mares in her same division, even though there's some terrific ones in it. I think she'd have to worry about Torpedo Anna, coming Breeders' Cup time. Right. One thing about her, though, if she were to go out, Torpedo Anna, and go out and win the Travers, they probably would bypass this race and go to the Classic. So
they might, yeah.
And if she doesn't win, how much will that take out of her? Then you have to come to California and run her not only on the West Coast, but over a track that Adair Manor obviously loves. And now she shows she's got a different dimension where if it's fast pace, she can lay back. If not, she takes the lead. Doesn't have to travel, won't be going anywhere. I mean, it's just all the ducks are lined up, as they say, in a row. I mean, she is going to have everything in her favor to win the Breeders' Cup. And right now, the way she's been developing at age 5, where she's at the peak of her maturity, she is dominant and very, very good.
And while Idiomatic was that good last year in winning the championship and also winning the Breeders' Cup, she's been kind of workmanlike and pedestrian in her performances so far, I think, through 2 races this year. So Adair Manor has passed Idiomatic on the totem pole right now, no doubt about that. And again, with that home court edge at Del Mar, she gets to stay home for that. She is looking like one of the real solid standouts in a division. If we don't take the 3-year-old filly Torpedo Anna on the rise up to take on older horses horses for the Breeders' Cup Distaff. We'll see what Kenny McPeak does with her. But what a cool showdown that would be. But no matter where Torpedo Anna ends up next in on Breeders' Cup Day, if she makes it that far, she's going to make the race far more intriguing, whether it's the boys or the distaff, because she is really an it horse, right? I mean, she's one you want to see the way she's run this year. So if you had to take them right now, Jeff, mile and an eighth, if they ran the Breeders' Cup Distaff right now, Torpedo Anna, Adair Manor, we'll give it to Del Mar so you can factor that in.
I think actually Torpedo Anna might have a little bit higher upside. One thing about Adair Manor, she wins the races. She never really runs with big figures. There's never ever any. She's always been more workmanlike. But on the other hand, she's relentless. And if you give her a 10 feet, she'll take a furlong on you. So It would be a great contrast in types. You've got the 3-year-old who theoretically has more room to develop and more room to get to the top than a 5-year-old who's going to run her race. I don't think Scylla ran her race the other day, and I'm not sure how great Scylla is anyway. I mean, she's good, don't get me wrong.
Right.
But one thing that, whereas you could make a case that Torpedo Anna, if she were to win the Travers, she will have beaten better competition than Adair Manor has ever run with. It's going to, I mean, that's why I'm hoping it happens, because we want this race to be at least 2 deep in competition. We don't want to see some 3 to 5 shot. That's no fun. But if you put together the best 3-year-old, and we've seen this. I remember, was it Songbird and Beholder? Was that
right?
I mean, there you had a contrast,
Right.
And it was a great race. That's what I'd like the Breeders' Cup or Distaff to be, and we need two in there, not just one.
And after the Clement Hirsch, you look at a filly like Pretty Mischievous. She's just not as good going longer in a mile and a 16th. I know she's won at that distance, but they may be better off cutting her back into the filly and mare sprint. She's done well around 1/3 in her career. I know she's a Kentucky Oaks winner. This was a good test drive, I think, to go out to Del Mar for this race. But the way she ran in the Clement Hirsch, I can't imagine that she's going to be a major factor in the distaff. So their best move might be to cut her back, freshen her up, and try to fire fresh. Also, in that filly and mare sprint division, we did have a race run last week that could have some major implications. It was the test stakes for 3-year-old fillies at Saratoga. And we talk about Torpedo Anna being the best of the 3-year-old fillies going long. Well, Ways and Means made her case that she's the best going short amongst these 3-year-old fillies. Here's the test.
Past the quarter pole, My Main Squeeze trying to come after them in third. They have 3/16 of a mile to go. Ways and Means puts away Emery and opens up 2. My Main Squeeze running a good race on the outside, and Dunham and Pearls in 4th. Coming to the 16th pole, and Ways and Means is now a Grade 1 winner. Handwritten by Flavien Prat to win the test, presented by Ticketmaster. Emery was...
All right, Jeff. So we talk about Ways and Means with the 3-year-old filly. She looks to be the head of that class on the East Coast for sure. What do you make of her? Is she the second coming of Goodnight Olive, or does she still have a ways to go?
I think she does have a ways to go, as you pointed out, a 3-year-old filly. But because she's a 3-year-old filly, again, there's room for more development than anyone, rather than if she were an older filly. But right now, according to the numbers, the speed figures, she's not quite there yet. I mean, we've got Sweet Aztec out here who's making there's a few others around the country. But right now, Ways and Means is basically the best in her division, and she'd have to get better. But who's to say she won't? I mean, the horses aren't they get better, or they sometimes they get worse. But she's got more room to improve. Daughter of Practical Joke, which spells 7 furlongs perfect for her, don't you think? And she's got enough tactical speed to always lay fairly close, but she can give you that last furlong. She's not blazingly fast early on, but boy, can she sit and pounce and go, and that works at Del Mar. So she stays healthy and adds to that the intrigue in that race. But right now, I'd give the older mares a little bit of an edge, but not much. And we'll see what Ways and Means does next.
Vava might be the best of the older fillies and mares on the East and in Kentucky amongst those, 4 and ups in the filly mare sprint division. And then, like you said, you've got the buzzsaw on the West Coast there with Sweet Azteca. So It could be a really good year on the dirt for the Californians when you talk about the distaff division and the filly and mare sprint division, right? When you got a Dare Manor, the likely favorite for the distaff, and Sweet Azteca looking like a likely favorite for the filly and mare sprint. Home team could be well represented in those two divisions when we get to Breeders' Cup time. Let's go back to the big board this week and talk about another division, the 2-year-old fillies. We haven't talked about the 2-year-olds much so far, other than our stars of tomorrow, but in stakes company, we now have a 2-time stakes winner. Her name is the Queen's MG, and she was good in the Adirondack, and she was good back at the Spa this past weekend.
Side and Dare to Breeze, 3 of them across the track at the top of the stretch. The Queen's MG is up to take the lead. Dare to Breeze in second. Italian Soiree is trying to rally, but the Queen's MG has given them the wave off. The Queen's MG absolutely towering over the competition in the Adirondack. Wins by 8. Italian Soiree, Atomic City, and Dare to Breeze.
This was a pretty good purchase. They bought this horse after the career debut win at Keeneland. You don't always see the early meet Keeneland winners turn out to be big-time 2-year-olds throughout the course of the year. A lot of times they're just Miss Right Now, winning those 4.5 furlong sprints. But when she won at Keeneland at 45-1 in her debut, it was the biggest upset we had seen in a 2-year-old race there since they went back to dirt at Keeneland back in 2014, 2015. So she was special from the get-go because people didn't know how good she was. She was highly impressive. A little bit of a step back in a mysterious race her next start, but in her last 2, since Saffie Joseph's got her right, she has been really, really dominant. And the Queen's MG right now, she looks like a great sprinter, Jeff, but is she a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies kind of horse? We're going to find out.
It would be funny if she was. She brought a whopping $3,500 as a yearling.
Yeah.
You don't have to give. Well, we'll talk about another horse that brought a little bit more that ran last week at Saratoga in our final segment. But as for the Queen's MG, she's by 1,000 words. So a colt that Bob Baffert trained, who was by Pioneer of the Nile. This filly out of a mare by Grindstone, who won the Derby. So theoretically on pedigree, there's no reason why she wouldn't run a middle business at least. Back-to-back 73 by her numbers. I think she's better than that, but the numbers are what they are. You're not going to win a Breeders' Cup Juvenile Fillies with a 73. Right. I promise you that. So maybe the other ones aren't that good, or maybe they weren't quite mature enough or developed enough to be at their best going 6.5. You see this a lot with 2-year-old fillies. They can look really good at 5, pretty good at 5.5, 6, and 6.5, and they get exposed. The more every 16th of a mile this time of the year for any 2-year-old. That next 16th of a mile can really, pay or disclose what they really are. But this filly, at least she's drawn away. Now she's not running particularly fast the last part of the race, but she is drawing away, and she's now had 4 starts with 3 wins. And obviously you come back and you run in the spin away, which is still a 1-turn race, and then after that, maybe you go somewhere else. I don't know. Keeneland, maybe?
Yeah, try the Alcibiades. She's won over the track there at Keeneland. That gives you a chance. And a mile to 16th at Keeneland uses the 16th pole finish line. So that's a good, first step going 2 turns because it's not a real true length of the stretch kind of finish, So, yeah, it would make a lot of sense for her to go spin away at Saratoga going 7/8 and then try to stretch out in the Alcibiades and see how she handles it there. Saffie Joseph's got a good one right now, though, and his barn is going really hot. If you've been handicapping around the country over the last 4, 5, 6 weeks, nobody's winning more races, it seems like, than Saffie Joseph. His horses are all seeming to run pretty darn well. Let's take a look at our final topic this week on It's Official as we finish up each and every week with our stars of tomorrow. Often these are maidens, sometimes 2-year-olds, sometimes younger horses, but this was a 2-year-old and the name was Ferocious and lived up to that name and maybe a little bit more in the career debut at Saratoga last weekend. The connections of Mage have another one to watch here. Ferocious.
Top of the stretch. Ferocious hugging the rail and trying to chase him down. Angles out now with good strides in second. And these two will come to the 8th pole together. And Ferocious is gathering serious momentum as Preeter has surfaced from well out of it. Ferocious takes off through the stretch. What an effort. It was expected, and he sure delivered. Ferocious jogs. Tight photo between Preter and El Prestigio. Behind them, Antietam was battling it out with Contrabandist. But the story here is the first-time starter, Ferocious.
Lined up well now to go to the hopeful, maybe at the end of the meet, Jeff. This was an awfully good performance, and I know you like to talk about the goosebumps. So how many did you get here?
I'd say a good 8 out of 10, maybe even higher than that. He earned a 96 buyer number, and that's a stratosphere type for its first-time starting 2-year-old at Saratoga.
Yeah.
Now, this race was 6 furlongs, but again, a son of Flatter who's been successful as a stallion. Maybe not all that fashionable at the sales ring, but he can get a horse that can stay. So I think that he's a beautiful horse, long, striding, scopy colt. In the 2-year-old in training sale, he breezed in 9 and change and did it breezing. Sometimes you see them all out and driving and whipping and all that stuff. This colt went 9 and 4 like this and has a stride, beautiful stride. Good athlete. Didn't even break in this race. Took some dirt early on the inside. He got about 5 races into one here with all the experience that he gained.
That's
and now it's just a matter of, what do you do with him? Do you wait until maybe like a champagne, or do you want to run him back late the meeting? You can do a lot of things with him, but the main thing is to try to, try to get him ready for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile, because he is the best 2-year-old prospect I've seen, and he's a real prospect. I mean, he does have a goosebump scale on mine. I haven't looked at the goosebump scale for the fillies yet. I haven't seen one that has really blown me away. I've seen some nice horses. This is the first goosebump rated horse I've had, and he just looks the part, and I loved his race.
These connections, if memory serves me, have been pretty bold with stretching out in big races around 2 turns for the first time. So I wouldn't be surprised if they tried to make the Breeders' Cup Juvenile their first time around 2 turns. That would keep something like the Hopeful or the Champagne, as that final prep that you're talking about, versus going to Keeneland for the Breeders' Futurity and getting the 2-turn prep there. Remember Mage, he stretched out on the Triple Crown Trail off the 7 furlong win, and they had a horse this year do the same thing where they went in the Gulfstream Series right from the maiden race into the big races going long. First time long can be one where horses just show you what they've really got, right? And that's when you want to back them, is the first time going long. So they may save that for the Breeders' Cup Juvenile. I'd be interested if this horse stays 1 turn.
I would. I love that first time around 2-turn angles. Now, we saw what Fierceness did last year, and he actually earned the identical Equibase rating in his maiden win at Saratoga last year. Remember how impressive that was? Same number, a 102 Equibase number that was assigned to this colt here, Ferocious. So we know what happened last year. You break your maiden with a big figure at Saratoga, you can win a Breeders' Cup. And I just think that this colt has got that in him. Hopefully he's going to be more consistent than Todd's horse was, but I'm blown away. That's all I can say. I was waiting. We're in August already. You want to see something emerge. What we just saw.
Right. You got Ferocious, you got Fierceness. We're going to get them confused from here to the end of the racing.
The same horse at this stage.
Yeah, right. At this stage, 1 for 1, they are from those Saratoga dominant wins. Let's review our topics this week on It's Official. We were talking about a horse targeting the Cup, maybe the Greenwood Cup and not the Breeders' Cup. That is the indomitable marathon runner named Next. Jeff and I both like to see him take on tougher competition, but respect the owner's decision at this point. Michael Foster is going to keep this horse in the marathon division the way it sounds. Loose on the lead and in the mud, it was an easy win, front running style in the Whitney Stakes for Arthur's Ride. Arthur's Ride, we'll see next time maybe on a fast track if he can do the same thing that he did in upsetting the Whitney in wire-to-wire fashion. Our Breeders' Cup tracker talked in the distaff division about a Dare Manor looking sharp in the Clement L. Hirsch and how she's favored right now in the distaff division. And we unveiled the 3-year-old filly Ways and Means and Stakes Company in her victory in the Test Stakes. The Queen's MG got her 2nd stakes win and 3rd win in 4 starts, and she's the tops of the 2-year-old fillies for now. We'll see how far she can go for Safi Joseph after her win in the Adirondack at Keeneland. And our star tomorrow, or Adirondack at Saratoga, and our star tomorrow also came from Saratoga last week, that being the brilliant 2-year-old debut winner, Ferocious. Jeff gave 8 out of 10 on the Goosebump scale. Those 5 topics are now official because Jeff and I said so. That's the way we do it, and we'll do it all again next week after we get to review the upcoming weekend, which may or may not include, Jeff, the Arlington Million. Tropical Storm Debbie is coming up the East Coast right now. Today it was announced by Colonial Downs in Virginia that they're going to cancel Thursday and Friday racing already. And then they're going to assess on Wednesday afternoon by 5 o'clock Eastern whether or not the Arlington Million Beverly D Secretariat card for Saturday will go on as scheduled or have to be postponed. Of course, last week we saw Saratoga have to postpone their turf races. They moved the Belmont Invitational Derby, 4-Star Dave. Those races are all together now this Saturday. Knock on wood. Is that storm going to come all the way up the coast and impact Saratoga as well? There's a lot of iffy decisions to be made this week in terms of weather and courses.
And Saratoga had some bad luck last year running horses on softened turf. They don't want to do that again. They're going to be very cautious about that. And hopefully, eventually, these races can get run. Because these turf races are carded in a certain sequence, and they need to be run when they're supposed to be run. But you can't take that chance if the turf horse, especially one that had such poor luck last year, you can't risk it. So hopefully the weather will stay long enough or move on and get through there before the weekend. One thing we don't have any issue out here is rain at Del Mar in August. So looking forward to racing this week. Right. Always great racing down there every week, as there should be in the East Coast when the weather cooperates. So looking forward to another great weekend of racing as we get closer and closer to championship that will be decided in the fall.
And as an aside on the talk of the turf and the rain and the conditions, I will say from this horse player's vantage point and to the horse players I talk to, we like to know ahead of time about things. And hats off to Colonial Downs look, they're going to look ahead. They're going to make a decision on Wednesday what to do with the Arlington Million card on Saturday. This stuff of waiting until post time, posting track conditions that are good on the turf, and then you're off turf when there's no additional rain. Don't try to dupe horse players into thinking I'm sticking around to play this card today and then pull the rug out from under them. It's bad business. It might help you today, but it's going to hurt you down the road. So my advice to any racetrack administrators who happen to watch our podcast, and some of them may work for companies that we're a part of and may do this or may not do this, make the decision early, make the call, let the fans know what's going on, let the horse players know what's going on. And if they happen to take their business somewhere else for the day, they'll come back to you. And that's the bottom line. And so I appreciate what they're doing at Colonial Downs by making an early decision on that Arlington Million card. And I hope it's about safety. And I get that 100%. And we've got to make the decisions based on safety. But once you know what those decisions are, they got to be public right away. You can't wait until noon, 1 o'clock, first leg of the pick 5 to make these decisions. I just think that an earlier decision benefits you long-term. I know this game makes every decision based on short-term versus long-term. So it's explainable what they're doing out there, but I think the short-term decision is the wrong one. I wish you'd look at it from a long-term standpoint, and I think horse players would appreciate it quite a bit more. That's my soapbox to wrap up the show this week. Jeff and I will be back on Friday to handicap races for the weekend. We'll know then whether or not we'll be handicapping the Arlington Million.
Yes, we'll know that.
We'll know those. The other races, maybe we'll be up in the air about on who's running where and when. But we will be back on Friday, and we're going to handicap some races come hell or high water, and I mean literally high water. We'll be here to do the handicapping. Have a great week, everybody. Go ahead, Jeff.
Yeah, I just want to say that I agree with everything you said. I want to just bring back this one. This goes back a ways, okay? Because I remember in the late 60s, went out to Santa Anita to watch, I believe it was the Big Cap. I think that was the race. Two of the best horses that I'd ever seen run were running in that race. The greatest showdown in the world. Now, you remember this is before internet or anything else like that. Yeah. You went to the races, and whatever you read in the newspaper the day before is what you knew.
Right.
And the two horses were Buckpasser and Pretense. And I got there, bought a program, and they were both scratched on the bottom, but nobody knew about it, you know. Yeah. And it wasn't like they got the word out and, you know, on the sports reports. That was disappointing.
Yeah.
You can respect the horse player and your fan a little bit better than that.
I agree with that 100%. Jeff and I will be back on Friday. Have a great week, everyone. We'll talk to you then.